Lesson. We learned how preventing cross-contamination helps keep harmful contamination from moving between foods, surfaces, equipment, and people. Now we'll focus on another major food safety control: time and temperature. Certain foods require temperature control because harmful microorganisms can grow when those foods remain at unsafe temperatures. You may hear these foods described as potentially hazardous foods or time and temperature. Control for safety foods, often called TCS foods. At Guanatos, this includes many of the foods we work with every day. The first numbers you need to remember are 41 and 135. Cold TCS food should generally be maintained at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Hot TCS food should generally be maintained at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or above. The temperatures between those points, 41 degrees through 135 degrees Fahrenheit, are commonly called the temperature danger zone. Why does this matter? Because bacteria can grow when food requiring temperature control remains in this range for too long. That means food safety isn't only about whether something feels hot or cold. We need to know the actual temperature. And that requires another important food safety tool: a thermometer. Never determine whether food is at a safe temperature simply by touching the container. Never assume food is safe because it looks hot. Never assume refrigeration is working correctly because the inside of the refrigerator feels cold. Color alone is not a reliable way to determine whether meat has reached a safe cooking temperature. Measure, don't guess. When checking food temperature, use the appropriate food thermometer according to your training. Measure the appropriate part of the product and make sure the thermometer itself is properly maintained, clean, and used in a way that prevents contamination. Different foods also have different minimum cooking requirements. For example, poultry such as chicken must reach a minimum internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Seafood generally requires 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Whole muscle steaks, chops, and similar beef, pork, veal, and lamb products generally require 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Ground meats have different requirements. You do not need to guess which temperature applies. Follow the approved recipe and temperature standard for the product. If the required cooking temperature has not been reached, the food is not finished simply because it looks cooked. Continue following the approved cooking procedure until the required standard is achieved. Time and temperature also matter after cooking. If food is being maintained hot for service, it generally needs to remain at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or above. If TCS food is being maintained cold, it generally needs to remain at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Temperature checks should be performed according to Guanatos procedures. If you discover food outside its required holding temperature, do not just put it back. Time matters too. How long was the food outside temperature control? What was its temperature? Why did the temperature change? Notify the appropriate manager or person in charge and follow the approved corrective procedure. Do not invent your own recovery procedure. Another critical process is cooling cooked food. Putting a large container of hot food into a refrigerator does not guarantee it will cool quickly enough. California requires potentially hazardous food to cool rapidly. Remember these numbers: 135 to 70 within 2 hours. Then, 70 to 41 or below within 4 hours. Set. That means the entire cooling process from 135 degrees to 41 degrees or below must occur within a total of 6 hours. Say it again: 135 to 70, in 2 70 to 41, in 4 more. Cooling methods may include techniques such as using shallow pans, dividing food into smaller portions, or using appropriate rapid cooling equipment. Follow the Guanatos procedure for the product being cooled. Do not simply place a large amount of hot food into storage. Temperatures need to be monitored. Reheating also requires proper control. When previously cooked and cooled TCS food is reheated for hot hold-in, follow the approved Guanatos procedure. 2. Not assume that reaching normal hot holding temperature alone is always sufficient. Reheated foods generally require 165 degrees Fahrenheit, reached rapidly. Food once properly reheated. The food can then be maintained at the required hot holding temperature. Time can sometimes be used as a public health control instead of temperature, but only when an approved procedure is being followed. When Guanatos uses an approved time control procedure, the food must be properly identified, timed, handled, and discarded according to that procedure. You have not been trained to use time as a control for a particular product or process. Maintain the required temperature and ask your manager. Another important rule: never reset the clock. If food has been outside temperature control, moving it elsewhere does not erase the time spent there. And if you cannot determine how long questionable food has been outside proper temperature control, do not guess. Notify the person in charge throughout your shift. Pay attention to the equipment responsible for temperature control: refrigerators, freezers, hot holding equipment, and steam tables. If equipment isn't maintaining the required temperature, report it immediately. Remember the core numbers from this lesson: cold food, 41 degrees or below; hot food, 135 degrees or above. Temperature danger zone, 41 through 135 degrees. For cooling, 135 to 70 within 2 hours. 70 to 41 within 4 additional hours. Use a thermometer. Follow the approved standard. Record temperatures when required. Take corrective action when something is outside the standard. Food can look, smell, and even taste normal, and still have been handled at unsafe temperatures. At Guanatos, we don't rely on appearance. We verify. Next, you'll complete a short assessment on time and temperature control. After that, we'll learn about cleaning, sanitizing, and food contact surfaces.